The starship Eclipse hovered silently above the jagged, purple-tinged clouds of Zephyra. Commander Lyra Vela stood on the bridge, her tall frame rigid, eyes scanning the holographic display of the planet below. Her soldiers, elite warriors from 3 different star systems, moved with mechanical precision behind her, following every command with unquestioning loyalty. Or so she had believed. The mission was straightforward: recover the energy core from the abandoned Zypheron mining facility, secure it for the Vanguard, and return to the fleet. Zyphera's storms were legendary, but Lyra had planned for every possibility. She trusted her soldiers to execute her orders without hesitation. "Commander, sensors detect movement near the facility," her tactical officer, a sleek reptilian named Zyrak, hissed. "It could be hostiles, or something worse." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Prepare for contact. Hold positions until I give the order. No mistakes." The dropships descended through the swirling clouds, metal cutting through the violet haze. Lyra's pulse quickened as the terrain grew clearer. Towering rock spires and deep fissures littered the landscape. Somewhere below, the Zypheran warlords waited, aware that the Vanguard had arrived. Her soldiers followed her lead without question, moving with silent coordination, weapons glinting under the storm-lit sky. But then, the unexpected happened. A sudden explosion shook the ground beneath them. One of the alien soldiers cried out, throwing his weapon aside. Another faltered, eyes darting around nervously. Lyra's heart sank as she saw the first soldier turn away and sprint toward the dropship. "Return to formation!" Lyra barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You will not abandon your post." But her commands fell on deaf ears. One by one, the soldiers turned and fled. Some ran screaming toward the evacuation points. Others simply vanished into the mist. Lyra's mind raced. This was impossible. Her soldiers were loyal. They had trained for years together, shared battles, victories, defeats. Yet here they were, leaving her alone in hostile territory. Before she could process it, a hail of plasma bolts cut across the clearing. Lyra barely ducked behind a rock, feeling the heat of the shots skim past her. The Zypheran warlords had anticipated her arrival, and they had expected betrayal. A figure emerged from the smoke, moving with a fluidity that made Lyra freeze for a moment. He was human, tall, broad-shouldered, with a rugged face marked by scars. His eyes burned with focus, scanning for threats as if the chaos around him was nothing. He moved with purpose, shielding her from incoming fire. "Step back!" he shouted over the roar of energy blasts. "I've got you!" Lyra stared at him in disbelief. Who are you?" "Captain Jarek Kane." The human replied without hesitation, his voice steady and confident. "And right now, you're not dying while I'm standing." Lyra wanted to protest, to assert command, but the sight of her soldiers fleeing and the relentless barrage of Zypheran fire left her no choice. She nodded once and followed his lead, keeping low and moving behind his protective line. They darted from cover to cover, plasma bolts sizzling around them. Lyra noticed something remarkable. Jarek never hesitated. He didn't panic, didn't shout orders at others, didn't question the chaos. He simply adapted. When a rock bridge collapsed under enemy fire, he vaulted over it effortlessly, dragging Lyra with him. When an ambush sprung from above, he countered with precision, firing rapidly yet efficiently, each shot finding its mark. Lyra had faced many warriors in her life, aliens and humans alike, but she had never seen anyone fight with such instinctive skill. He was not just strong, he was unpredictable, a force the Zypheran warlords could not anticipate. "You can run, you know," she said, trying to regain some composure. "Or hide." Jarek glanced at her, a faint smirk appearing despite the situation. "And miss out on the fun? Not my style. Besides, you don't seem like the hiding type either." Lyra couldn't help a brief, incredulous laugh. For a moment, the fear that had gripped her eased. They reached a narrow canyon where the Zypheran forces had set up a choke point. Lyra froze. This was a trap. There was no way past without facing heavy resistance. She turned to Jarek, expecting caution, but he was already assessing the terrain, calculating every movement. "Trust me," he said simply. "I've got an idea." Before she could ask, he sprinted across the open ground, drawing enemy fire. He rolled, leapt, and fired, each movement timed perfectly. Lyra followed, keeping low, feeling an odd sense of calm despite the danger. Every human instinct screamed panic, but Jarek's confidence anchored her. They reached a ridge overlooking the enemy camp. Lyra finally had a moment to catch her breath. The scale of the betrayal became clear. Her soldiers were not just fleeing. They had been bribed, coerced, or perhaps manipulated by some force she could not yet understand. They were gone, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. "You okay?" Jarek asked, scanning the horizon. Lyra swallowed hard. Yes. For now."
Jarek nodded.
"Because out here, now is all we get." They moved silently, keeping to shadows and rocky outcrops, inching toward the mining facility where the energy core awaited. Every step was a reminder that she could not rely on anyone else. Her soldiers had abandoned her. Her life depended entirely on the human beside her. As they approached the entrance to the facility, the storm above intensified, lightning slicing across the sky like jagged blades. Lyra felt a surge of determination. She was a commander, a strategist, and she had survived countless battles. But never had she faced an enemy she could not predict, nor allies she could trust completely. Jarek crouched beside her, pointing toward the facility's doorway. "We go in quiet. Stick close. I cover you." Lyra nodded, placing her hand on the hilt of her weapon. "And if things go wrong?" He grinned, a kind of grin that made her question his sanity. "Then we improvise. Humans are good at that." Inside the facility, darkness swallowed them. Shadows twisted across broken machinery, remnants of Zypheran miners long gone. The energy core pulsed faintly in the distance, a lifeline they needed to secure. Every corridor they navigated was rigged with traps, some mechanical, some technological, designed to deter intruders. A sudden alarm blared, red lights flashing. Lyra's heart pounded. They had been detected. Plasma turrets whirred to life, targeting them with lethal precision. Jarek leapt into action, using debris as cover, disabling the turrets one by one with a combination of skill and instinct. Lyra marveled at his ability to adapt in real time. Each decision was quick, yet calculated. It was not reckless. It was survival shaped into art. Finally, they reached the chamber holding the energy core. The room was vast, the core suspended in a magnetic field, glowing with an otherworldly light. Lyra stepped forward, her mind racing with relief and strategy. They were close to completing the mission, yet she knew the real challenge had only begun. Jarek glanced at her. "You know, you're not bad in a fight yourself. A little rusty without backup, though." Lyra smirked, despite the tension. "And you?" "You've been keeping me alive without even knowing me?" He shrugged. "Part of the job. Partly, I don't like seeing people get left behind." Lyra's chest tightened. She had led soldiers for years, trained them, trusted them, yet none had stayed. And now, a human, unproven, unknown, and somehow unstoppable, was the one keeping her alive. The lights of the core reflected in Jarek's eyes as he scanned the chamber. "We get this core, we get out. Then we figure out why your soldiers turned on you. And I have a feeling this is bigger than just fear or betrayal." Lyra nodded silently. Deep down, she understood that trust had changed. In a galaxy where allegiances could crumble overnight, she had found an ally not in her trained soldiers, but in a human warrior. The odds were against them, The enemy was relentless, and the future uncertain, but for the first time that day, Lyra felt hope. Outside, the storm raged on, a reminder of the chaos that awaited them. But inside, as they approached the core, the two of them moved as one. Strategist and warrior, commander and protector, human and leader. And in that moment, Lyra realized something she had never expected. Sometimes survival depended not on the armies you commanded, but on the courage of a single human beside you. And Jarrett Kane was determined to see them both survive. The energy core hummed softly, suspended in its magnetic field, casting a pale blue glow across the chamber walls. Lyra Vela's fingers hovered above the control panel, calculating the safest way to deactivate the field without triggering alarms or traps. Every step so far had been dangerous, but now the stakes felt higher. If they succeeded in taking the core, they might finally understand why her soldiers had abandoned her, and what greater threat awaited them. Jarrett Kane leaned against a nearby console, cleaning his weapon. He watched Lyra work with a keen eye, as if reading her thoughts.
"You handle these things like a pro," he said. "I'd probably blow it up in 5 seconds if left alone."
Lyra gave him a small smile. "You're probably right, but I need someone to watch my back, and that's where you come in." He grinned. "That's the fun part. You worry about the fancy buttons, I worry about the guys with guns trying to kill us." With a careful press and a series of adjustments, Lyra finally deactivated the magnetic field. The energy core floated free, pulsing steadily like a heartbeat. She breathed a sigh of relief. But the sense of triumph was short-lived. The walls of the chamber began to shift, massive panels sliding outward to reveal a squad of heavily armed Zyfarian mercenaries. They had been waiting for this moment, expecting a straightforward theft. They hadn't counted on a human with unpredictable tactics. "Lyra," Jarrett said calmly, crouching into a combat stance. "Time to improvise." Lyra nodded, her training kicking in. Together they fought with perfect coordination. Jarrett darted between cover, drawing fire, while Lyra moved strategically, using her knowledge of the room's layout to gain an advantage. Plasma bolts sizzled past them, but they stayed one step ahead. Jarrett's human unpredictability made it impossible for the mercenaries to anticipate his movements. Each shot, each dive behind cover, seemed effortless, yet carried deadly precision. The battle was brutal but brief. The mercenaries underestimated them, relying on numbers instead of adaptability. Jarrett and Lyra neutralized them quickly, leaving the corridor littered with the stunned and defeated. Breathing heavily, Lyra finally allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. For the first time since the betrayal, she realized she wasn't entirely alone. "Not bad," she said, her voice low but firm. "You've saved my life more times than I can count today." Jarrett chuckled, cleaning his weapon again. "And I'll do it again if I have to. Humans have a habit of surviving when the odds are stacked against us. It's kind of our thing." Lyra studied him. There was truth in his words. Across the galaxy, humans were often underestimated by more advanced civilizations, dismissed as impulsive or weak. But Jarrett was living proof that survival wasn't about technology or training alone. It was about courage, adaptability, and sheer determination. They moved quickly through the facility, carrying the energy core between them. Lyra noticed every detail, the security drones disabled, the data terminals untouched, and realized they might find answers here. Perhaps these terminals held records that could explain why her soldiers had abandoned their posts. As they reached the control room, Lyra interfaced with the terminals. Streams of data scrolled rapidly across the screens, showing files encrypted and heavily guarded. After several tense moments, she cracked one open, her eyes widening as she read. The files revealed a startling truth. Her soldiers had not fled out of fear alone. They had been compromised by a corporation called Voratech Industries, a shadowy conglomerate manipulating the war for profit. Advanced neurotechnology had been used to control the minds of her troops, forcing them to abandon her mission at the critical moment. Lyra's fists clenched, so it wasn't cowardice, it was control. Jarek's expression darkened. Mind control?
That explains a lot. And it also explains why they didn't even think twice about leaving you.
Lyra shook her head. This is bigger than I imagined. Voratek isn't just manipulating soldiers. They're manipulating the entire war effort. If they get the energy core, they could tip the balance of power in the galaxy.
Jarek's jaw tightened. Then we can't let that happen.
We take this core and we stop them. Lyra nodded. Despite the shock, her mind sharpened. Every strategist in her had begun calculating the next steps. They couldn't rely on reinforcements. They couldn't trust any other soldiers. But together, she and Jarek could be enough. They exited the facility, energy core secured, moving cautiously toward the extraction point. The storm on Zyphera had worsened, lightning flashing across the purple sky, illuminating jagged cliffs and deep chasms. Visibility was low and every step carried danger. Why humans? Lyra asked suddenly, breaking the tense silence. Why did you stay when everyone else left? Jarek glanced at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Maybe because humans understand what it means to survive without backup. We're not always the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest. But we adapt. We improvise, and we don't give up when everyone else does. Lyra considered his words. There was a lesson here, a reminder that leadership wasn't just about giving orders. It was about understanding resilience in all its forms. Her soldiers had abandoned her, but humans like Jarek proved that courage and ingenuity could defy the odds. Their path to the dropship was blocked by a massive chasm, too wide to jump and too deep to climb. Lyra surveyed the surrounding terrain, weighing options. The storm was picking up, rain lashing at them like a warning. Jarek's eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint. "Got an idea?" he said, scanning a series of abandoned mining cables stretching across the chasm. "We use these to swing across. Risky, but doable." Lyra's brow furrowed. "And if we fall, then we die trying," he said simply, adjusting the harness he had found on the cables. "But I don't plan on falling. You ready?" Lyra nodded, trusting his instincts. They swung across the chasm, muscles straining, hearts pounding. Until they reached the other side safely, her mind marveled at the human capacity to take calculated risks where others might hesitate. Finally, they reached the extraction point, only to find that the dropship had been sabotaged, its engines crippled, no longer operable. Zypheran forces were closing in, alerted by the facility's compromised security. Lyra cursed under her breath. The situation was spiraling. Jarek assessed the wreckage, then looked at Lyra. "We improvise again. We can't wait for luck. We make our own path." With swift action, he rigged a small hovercraft, using spare parts from the dropship and the facility. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Lyra tested it cautiously, then allowed herself a fleeting smile as it lifted off the ground, carrying them toward the safety of the outer cliffs. As they flew over the storm-swept landscape, Lyra realized something fundamental. She had been trained to command, to rely on soldiers, to expect obedience. But in this moment, survival depended on a partnership, not hierarchy. Jarek's human ingenuity and courage had turned a dire situation into a chance of victory. The wind tore at her hair, rain lashing at her face. Yet she felt a surge of determination. If her soldiers could be controlled and turned against her, then perhaps the galaxy needed to see what humans were truly capable of: courage under fire, creativity when all seemed lost, and a refusal to abandon someone in need. Jarek glanced at her, reading her expression. "You okay?"
Lyra nodded firmly. "I am now."
"And I think we can win this." He smiled, the kind of smile that carried both confidence and challenge. "Good, because we're just getting started." As the hovercraft cut through the storm, Lyra allowed herself to imagine the future. Her soldiers freed from control, Voratic exposed, and the galaxy reminded that courage, ingenuity, and loyalty were not bound to alien races alone. Humans had a place in this fight, and Jarek Kane was proof of their strength. For the first time since the betrayal, Lyra felt hope, steady and unyielding. The mission was far from over, but with Jarek by her side, she knew that even the most impossible odds could be challenged. Together they would face the storm, the enemies, and the betrayal that had nearly cost them everything. And as Zyfera's purple cloud swirled beneath them, Lyra understood one undeniable truth. In a universe filled with treachery and chaos, sometimes the most unlikely ally, the human, could be the difference between life and death. The hovercraft skidded over the jagged surface of Zyfera, finally landing on a flat ridge overlooking the dark expanse below. The storm still raged, lightning cutting the sky in violent streaks, but Lyra Vela felt a renewed sense of purpose. The energy core pulsed in her hands, a fragile lifeline that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Beside her, Jarek Kane checked their gear, his movements calm and methodical, as if danger had been his constant companion. Lyra studied him, thinking of how far they had come. She had been abandoned by her soldiers, betrayed at a critical moment, yet here she was, alive, moving forward, and trusting a human in a way she never thought possible. Her pride bristled at the thought, but she could not deny the truth. Jarek's courage and adaptability had saved her life more than once. "We need a plan," she said, scanning the horizon. "Voratek's influence is stronger than I imagined. If we don't strike strategically, they'll regain control of the core, or worse, retaliate against the Vanguard fleet. First, we need intel. The energy core is only part of the puzzle. If Voratek can manipulate soldiers, they probably have more tricks ready. We find them before they find us." Lyra accessed her portable terminal, pulling up encrypted communications she had intercepted from the facility. Screens filled with data showed troop movements, corporate facilities, and mercenary contracts. Voratek had been quietly orchestrating the war for decades, controlling not just soldiers but entire colonies through economic and military manipulation. "They are planning a full-scale assault on the northern sectors," Lyra said, pointing at the holographic map. "If we don't act, countless lives will be lost, and the war could tip in their favor permanently." Jarek's jaw tightened. "Then we strike first, but we do it smart. We can't rely on numbers. We rely on skill, surprise, and adaptability. That's where humans excel." Lyra paused, realizing the truth in his words. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy, seen as reckless, impulsive, and weak compared to advanced alien civilizations. Yet time and again, she had witnessed Jarek's ingenuity, his ability to turn a hopeless situation into an advantage. Humans survived because they adapted, because they improvised, because they refused to give up. She made her decision. We hit their supply lines first, cut off reinforcements, sabotage communications, and draw them into a trap we control. Then we reclaim the energy core and free my soldiers from their control." Jarek grinned. "Sounds like fun." "Led the way, Commander." The next several hours were a blur of careful planning and calculated movement. They navigated through jagged terrain, avoiding patrols, using shadows and the storm to their advantage. Jarek's improvisational skills were invaluable. He constructed decoys from rocks and debris, diverted patrols with controlled explosions, and identified weak points in Voratek's defenses that no one else could have seen. Lyra marveled at his ability to turn ordinary terrain into a tactical advantage. Her military training had prepared her for countless scenarios, yet Jarek's human intuition often gave them the edge. His unpredictability was not reckless. It was survival honed into art. As night fell over Zyfera, they reached a Voratek supply depot, hidden in a cavern beneath a jagged cliff. The depot was guarded heavily, with drones patrolling the perimeter and automated turrets scanning the area. Lyra and Jarek crouched behind a rock outcropping, surveying the defenses.
We take them quietly,
Lyra said. Minimal noise, minimal exposure. I want this done before dawn. Jarek nodded, his eyes scanning the patrol patterns. Leave the tricky stuff to me. They moved in silence, shadows among shadows. Jarek disabled the turrets with a combination of precision shots and improvised hacking, while Lyra used her knowledge of tactical maneuvers to avoid detection. The human speed and creativity made the impossible seem simple. Within minutes, they had breached the depot, securing vital supplies, communication logs, and even some of the neurocontrol devices used on Lyra's soldiers. Lyra studied the devices carefully, her mind racing. If we can reverse this, my soldiers will be free. But we need the right tools and time to do it safely. One mistake and we could kill them instead of freeing them.
Jarek's face hardened. Then we do it right.
No shortcuts. They returned to a hidden ridge overlooking the northern sectors, analyzing the information they had gathered. Lyra's mind worked through every possibility, mapping out Voratek's next moves. It became clear that the corporation intended to strike quickly, taking advantage of weakened morale in the vanguard ranks. If left unchecked, entire colonies would fall, and Voratek's control would expand exponentially.
We don't just stop them, Lyra said, her voice firm. We need to hit their headquarters directly. If we take down their command structure, their operations will collapse. Jarek smirked. Direct approach. Risky, but satisfying.
I like it. Humans love a good challenge.
Over the next few days, they executed a series of strategic strikes, weakening Voratek's hold on the region. Every encounter was tense, requiring precision, adaptability, and cooperation.
Jarek's human ingenuity saved them more than once, rigging improvised explosives, creating diversions, and even repurposing Voratek technology against them. Lyra watched him in awe. The humans' resilience and creativity were unlike anything she had experienced. They survived where others failed, not because they were stronger, but because they refused to be predictable. In every battle, Jarek's resourcefulness made the difference between life and death. Finally, the day came when they could confront Voratek directly. Lyra's soldiers, now free from neurocontrol thanks to their retrieved devices, rallied around her. Their loyalty returned, tempered by the knowledge that betrayal had not been their fault. Lyra felt a surge of pride and relief. She had led them through adversity, and now, with human ingenuity on their side, they were ready to fight as one. The assault on Voratek's orbital fortress began at dawn. Lyra and Jarek led the charge, moving through heavy defenses with precision and courage. Drones and automated turrets fired relentlessly, but Jarek's improvisation turned every obstacle into an advantage. He used the fortress's own systems against them, creating chaos among the defenders. Lyra coordinated her freed soldiers, issuing commands that combined strategy and flexibility. The battle was fierce, testing every skill, every decision they had made. Yet with humans and aliens working together, they pushed forward, overcoming Voratek's defenses, step by step. As they reached the control center, Lyra faced the corporation's leaders. A group of high-ranking executives, smug and confident, believed themselves untouchable, but they had underestimated human courage. Jarek moved with calculated unpredictability, disabling security measures, neutralizing threats, and creating openings for Lyra and her team. Lyra confronted the leader, her voice steady. Your control ends today. The lives you've manipulated, the soldiers you've betrayed, the colonies you've exploited, they are no longer yours to command. The leader sneered. You think a human and a few soldiers can stop us? You are nothing compared to Voratek's power.
Jarek stepped forward, eyes blazing. Underestimate humans at your own risk.
We survive when the odds are impossible, and we fight when others run. With a coordinated strike, Lyra's soldiers disabled the neurocontrol systems, freeing countless individuals across the galaxy who had been under Voratek's influence. Jarek and Lyra confronted the executives directly, forcing them into surrender. The corporation's grip on the war began to crumble as news of their defeat spread. Breathing heavily, Lyra looked around at the chaos and victory. Her soldiers were loyal once more, fighting not because they were controlled, but because they believed in her leadership. And beside her, Jarek Kane, human, fearless, inventive, stood as the symbol of everything they had achieved. "You did it," Lyra said quietly, turning to Jarek. "We did it." He smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "Not just me, not just you. Everyone who refused to give up. That's what humans do. That's what you just saw in action." Lyra nodded, understanding at last the deeper truth. Humans had something the galaxy often overlooked: resilience, ingenuity, and an unbreakable spirit. Jarek's courage had inspired not only her, but her soldiers and countless others. They had faced overwhelming odds, yet they had survived. And more than that, they had triumphed. The battle was over, but the war continued. Lyra knew Voratek's influence would linger, and other threats would emerge, yet she felt stronger, wiser, and more determined. With humans like Jarek by her side, the galaxy had a chance to see that courage, creativity, and determination were forces more powerful than any weapon. And as Lyra looked at Jarek, she realized something else. Loyalty was not earned by rank, title, or expectation. It was earned through action, through courage, through standing beside someone when everyone else fled. And in that truth, the galaxy might find its hope, not in technology, not in armies, but in the spirit of a single human willing to fight when no one else would. The orbital fortress of Voratek Industries loomed like a dark fortress against the black expanse of space. Its jagged towers and spinning defense arrays glimmered with cold, artificial light. From orbit, it seemed impossible to assault. Lyra Vela stood at the command deck of the Vanguard flagship, gazing at the enemy stronghold through reinforced viewing panels. The storm of chaos she had fought through on Zyphera seemed tame compared to what awaited them now. Jarek Kane approached her quietly, scanning the readouts from their recon drones. "They've repaired some defenses since our last strikes. Automated turrets, reinforced walls, and a small fleet of patrol drones. They're expecting us." Lyra clenched her fists.
"Good. Then we'll make sure they don't get what they expect."
Her voice was calm, but inside, adrenaline surged. The final confrontation would test every skill, every lesson, and every ounce of courage she and Jarek had. "Are you ready?" he asked. His eyes were steady, unwavering, even in the face of impossible odds. Lyra nodded. "We don't have a choice. We've come this far. We finish this." They moved into the assault shuttle, joined by her soldiers, those who had been freed from Voratek's control and were now fully loyal again. The shuttle lifted off, cutting through the blackness of space toward the fortress. Every moment felt tense, every shadow a potential threat. Jarek piloted the shuttle with precision, weaving through patrol drones and laser turrets. Lyra stood behind him, overseeing the operation and coordinating the soldiers. Each maneuver was critical. One mistake could mean death. Yet despite the danger, a strange calm settled over her. She had seen Jarek adapt, improvise, and survive situations that would have killed others. She trusted him completely. As they neared the fortress, alarms blared across the Voratek networks. Automated defenses targeted the shuttle, launching missiles and energy pulses. Jarek reacted instantly, dodging and firing, creating openings for the Vanguard soldiers to disable turrets from above. Lyra issued commands with precision, her strategy combining human unpredictability with alien military discipline. They breached the outer walls and the shuttle crash-landed on a flat platform inside the fortress. Sparks flew, alarms continued to scream, and Voratek's forces swarmed toward them. Lyra's soldiers formed a protective perimeter around the energy core, now glowing faintly in the chaos. "Move fast," Jarek said, tossing grenades with practiced ease, clearing paths through the corridors. "We need to reach the control center before they regroup."
The corridors were dark, narrow, and heavily guarded. Automated drones zipped through the air, shooting indiscriminately. Lyra and Jarek moved together, a unit of strategy and instinct. Lyra calculated the safest routes while Jarek took impossible risks, leaping over traps, dismantling security measures, and improvising tools on the fly. At every turn, the fortress seemed designed to overwhelm intruders, yet Lyra realized something critical. They expected a straightforward attack, not a combination of tactical genius and unpredictable human improvisation. They reached the central control hub, a massive chamber filled with consoles, and a holographic projection of Vortex operations across the galaxy. The corporation's leaders were there, flanked by elite guards. They looked confident, assured that their power was unassailable. Lyra stepped forward, her hand resting on the hilt of her weapon. "It's over," she said. "Your control, your manipulation, your lies, they end today." One of the executives sneered. "You think a few rebels can undo decades of planning? You are nothing compared to Vorotech Industries." Jarek moved beside Lyra, scanning the room with sharp eyes. "Underestimate humans at your own risk. We survive where the impossible would kill others, and we fight when no one else does. Today you learn that lesson." With a sudden motion, he disabled the security turrets in the room using a combination of precision shots and improvised hacking. Lyra's soldiers advanced, overpowering the guards and securing the room. Vorotech's executives realized too late that the tide had turned against them. Lyra approached the main console, her fingers flying across controls to disable the fortress's security systems and prevent any escape. The holographic projection flickered as alarms signaled the collapse of their operations across the galaxy. Colonies freed from neurocontrol began to signal for help, and Vorotech's network of manipulation began to crumble. One of the executives lunged toward her with a concealed weapon, but Jarek reacted instantly, intercepting the attack with a precise strike. Lyra, meanwhile, finished disabling the remaining systems, securing victory. The fortress shook as the last of its automated defenses shut down. Lyra looked at Jarek, breathing heavily. "We did it!" "The core is safe, your systems are down, and their control is gone." Jarek smirked, a faint gleam of exhaustion and satisfaction in his eyes. "And we survived, of course. Never forget the human factor." Lyra smiled faintly. "I won't. You've taught me a lesson about courage, adaptability, and loyalty that no military training ever could." As the smoke cleared and the last of Vorotech's forces surrendered, Lyra gathered her soldiers. The ones who had once abandoned her now stood proudly, fully aware of the truth behind their actions, and grateful for their freedom. Lyra addressed them, her voice calm but commanding. "You were controlled, yes, but now you are free. You fought alongside humans and rediscovered your courage. Let this victory remind you that loyalty and bravery are earned, not forced, and that together, anything is possible." Her soldiers cheered, a sound that echoed through the fortress like a wave of triumph. Jarek stood beside her, quiet for a moment, letting the victory sink in. Lyra turned to him. "You stayed when no one else would. You improvised, risked everything, and saved lives that even I thought were lost. You've shown me the value of human courage." Jarek shrugged, modestly, though his eyes betrayed pride. Humans survive, Lyra. It's what we do. And sometimes, we protect people worth saving." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of respect, trust, and something deeper. In a galaxy where betrayal had seemed inevitable, she had found an ally whose courage could not be shaken. She realized that the future of their missions, the survival of countless lives, and the hope of the galaxy could depend on this unexpected bond. Outside the fortress, Vorotech's operations crumbled. Communications systems failed, colonies regained freedom, and the galaxy slowly began to understand that human resilience and ingenuity were forces to be reckoned with. Lyra and her soldiers prepared to return to the Vanguard fleet, carrying not just the energy core,
at the knowledge that bravery, strategy, and the unpredictable spirit of humans could change the course of events, even against overwhelming odds. As the shuttle lifted off from the orbital fortress, Lyra looked out at the galaxy stretching endlessly before them. She thought of the storm on Sci-fi, the betrayals, the battles, and the moments where she had felt hopeless. And she thought of Jarek Kane, a human who had not only protected her, but had reminded her that courage, loyalty, and ingenuity could triumph over even the most impossible challenges. Lyra smiled quietly to herself. The war was not over, but a new chapter had begun. One where humans could stand shoulder to shoulder with alien soldiers, proving that ingenuity, adaptability, and determination could overcome fear, betrayal, and oppression. And in that chapter, she knew that Jarek Kane, and humans like him, would always be at the forefront of survival and victory. The shuttle soared through the void of space, carrying them toward new challenges, new threats, and new victories. And for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt truly confident, not just in herself, but in the unpredictable courage of the human spirit. The galaxy had seen betrayal, it had seen manipulation, and it had seen despair. But it had also seen bravery, ingenuity, and determination, the very qualities that defined humanity. And as Lyra Vela and Jarek Kane prepared for the battles ahead, one truth shone brighter than any star. Even when abandoned by many, a single human warrior could protect, inspire, and change the course of the galaxy. They were ready. The universe would not forget it.